brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking hosts, the good old boys. And now it's sippin' time.
Oh, it's definitely sipping time today out west. Hey, it's good old boy Mike here. They don't talk like that in the West, do they?
Maybe,
hey, welcome
maybe
to the
West
Sips
Virginia.
episode.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's some place out yonder. Welcome to the Sips episode where everything good in life is worth discussing. I'm one of your hosts here at the table today, good old boy Mike. Joining me here at the table is good old boy Jason.
Good to be here.
And good old Beast.
Thanks for having me. Good to meet you guys.
And Made Man Bob.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Now, Steven, the Beast, has a blog called Smoky Beast with hundreds of whiskey reviews, and Bob is joining us again from the Bourbon Mafia, both of which we'll hear more about at the end of the show today. While our sip segments are all about wine, distilled spirits, tea, and coffee, this episode today is all about High West out of Park City, Utah. An excellent flight of 6 of their products to discuss today. We have 6 great products from High West. They are Boo Rye, Campfire, Rendezvous, American Prairie, Double Rye, and Midwinter's Night's Dram. Those are the products we're going to talk about on today's Sips show. Now, High West makes about 15 products currently on the market, so this is just a sample of everything that they make. We're going to give you some background on High West and then taste and rate these products for you today. Probably some tough Western talk just to make it interesting for all you city folks, too.
Yeehaw! Howdy!
Well, Made Man Bob is going to talk about High West Distillery for y'all.
I'm happy to. High West was started by David Perkins. David was a former biochemist with a passion for cooking in the American West. David graduated with a degree in biochemistry and worked for Pfizer and Amgen before deciding to leave his job in the biotech industry and start a distillery, which I'm waiting to stop my legal job and start a distillery. He wanted to make Western whiskey. His wife apparently also had some family who helped start up one of the larger distilleries in the eastern half around the 1900s. In 2007, after going through Utah's complex licensing process, David's dream became true, and High West Distillery...
Is that a blood sample and a marriage certificate?
Lord only knows.
A sign from God.
In my day job, I for fun, will read dram packs in different states, and it's just, they're all over the place. It's insane. David's dream came true back in 2007. He started High West Distillery and Saloon. It's in Park City. It was its first legal distillery since 1870. It's in Old Town Park City. You can actually ski into the place. Really neat place. With a 250-gallon pot still.
Wait, I'm sorry. You said a ski-in distillery.
Yep. It's right at the base of the mountain. Oh, come on.
Wow.
Skiing is an excuse to get drunk, and drunk is an excuse for skiing, so...
I agree. Those are two things that should always be welded together.
Exactly. So, they started, as a lot of new distilleries do, by sourcing aged product from distilleries such as LDI, which is now MGP, and LMNOP. You're trying to keep up with the names, but they're out of Lawrenceburg, the former Seegers brand, to fill in the gap where they're waiting for their own product to mature. But they did more than just bottle it, which a lot of people have done. They actually, they've actually been doing a lot of work with it. With a background in experimentation, David started doing just that, experimenting with the whiskeys at hand to see if he could make a product that the whole was better than the sum of its parts. Blending different whiskeys to come up with something of their own with a unique flavor profile, much like the Master Blenders of Scotland.
Now wait, I'm sorry. You said Master Blenders of Scotland in whiskey, and you're in where? You're in Utah. I thought
Park
we
City.
were actually exporting the practice blending whiskey to Canadians, eh?
Nothing wrong with blended whiskey. There's plenty of good stuff out there. In recognition of their efforts, High West was named the 2011 Whiskey Pioneer of the Year by Whiskey Advocate magazine. In addition to using sources of whiskey, they've also been distilling their own for a little over 5 years and should have, from some inside information they gave me, a natural release of their own in-house made spirit within about the next year or so. They're also producing a growing line of other products. They make a vodka. They make a couple of different brandies. They also do barrel-aged cocktails. They do a barrel-aged Manhattan and a barrel-aged Boulevardier that is really damn good. Apparently this plan's worked for High West. They've grown by leaps and bounds to the point that they've outgrown that facility. They've opened a second larger facility just outside the Park City area at a 3,500-acre cattle ranch called Blue Sky. The new distillery is 20,000 square feet and boasts a new 1,600-gallon copper spot still that was made in Scotland. It's currently up and running, and they have an opening date for the public of September 9th. It's going to be a big party. There's also a visitor center, a very large gift shop, tasting room, private meeting rooms. They've got a whole other restaurant there. Very, very nice facility. I've seen on their website they have a drone flyover. Really, really pretty country.
So, Bard Whiskey, well, shoot fire. They's not the only one doing that, eh, they? Good old boy Jason.
No. So Mike and I covered all things MGP on another episode, and although High West was not part of the lineup, we covered a broad range of products distilled at MGP, several of which are in similar situations of waiting for their own whiskey to mature. Maybe we can revisit some of these brands after they changed to see if the quality changed, either got better or worse.
Well, this whole story is really a bit of a quagmire, all the way around. I mean, just a lot of blending going on. I mean, I think probably the thing is the location is a very strange part of the story. I mean,
why the desert?
I can't figure out why Park City, it's just Utah in general is not a friendly, state for alcohol-related industry. It's definitely a very arduous, permitting process. And I'm really familiar with.
You don't think the ski in, ski out was a factor there?
I can't even imagine what it takes to make alcohol in Utah itself. And the climate just doesn't make any sense either.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that they would have a hard time making alcohol there with the high temperature and high altitude.
Yeah, I mean, the old distillery is at exactly 7,000 feet. That's their vodka's named like 7,000. So I mean, they're pretty high up. But I don't know. Once you find a place you like, if it's just the place you like, well, I guess you go through hell or high water to do what you want to do there. Yeah,
I mean, it's just really it's a bit of an anomaly. I think for the location. I've got to believe there's a family connection, or he just, loves that part of the country and looked around and said, hey, nobody else is making
his favorite movie was Blazing
at the bottom
Saddles.
of a ski lift,
Lack of competition, I mean.
And that the Business 101, see a need, fill a need, that's for sure.
Exactly.
I had to believe that was the first part of the equation. I agree with Beast that that was a key part of the whole geography. Going, all right, just back it up right to the end of the ski lift. Just a little bit further, boys. All right, set the still down right here. Well, the product line for High West is really vast, and they really have a lot of things that you're. Making with MGP can actually be, quite a challenge. I mean, do you think that David will bring all of those products in-house, or do you like one at a time, or it depends on kind of where, things are maturing? I mean, I know that all of you have watched a lot of distilleries kind of go through that transition point, moving between doing something, either on contract with MGP or another distillery, or then kind of bringing things in-house. I And 15 different products. I mean, I can't believe it's going to be a wholesale, one move, kind of thing here.
There's no way they could do it. They wouldn't be able to put enough stuff away and have enough product aged just to keep up. So I'm sure it's not going to be an immediate turn. And the other thing with them is they do source LDI, but they source, a lot of the basis. Some of their stuff is Barton. They've sourced, I know, from Four Roses. So I mean, they've gotten product from a lot of different places as well. So, that helps them to diversify the product that they're putting out a lot. But I don't see them turning it over, in any quick time frame because they've got so many products. Plus, they were lucky. They were one of the early entries in with LDI. Now every Tom, Dick, and Harry is opening a distillery trying to get product, but I'm sure they've got a pretty good contract locked up. So, I'm sure they have a steady supply, whereas a lot of guys are strangling right now.
Well, I can tell you, I was just over here thinking and crunching some numbers.
I was watching that.
Yeah, so I had to text a friend of mine because I wanted to get some actual raw data. So their original still, which was 250 gallons, if they were to run it on a double run, meaning they were to cook it and then strip it, in that time frame, which would take a full 24 hours, they could produce 1 barrel of whiskey. So that means they could only produce, if they cooked every single day, 300 and whatever barrels, depending on how long they're open. So with their 1,600 gallon pot still, you're looking at they could produce 6 barrels a day. So open 5 days a week or whatever, you can do that math. But in my eyes, with the way they're going right now, they have no chance of producing all their own product to supply Utah, let alone the whole United States.
Yeah, Well, and as you'll hear a little bit more, the nature of even a lot of the products that we're covering today, they are branded.
Branded?
Yeah, that's correct.
You're back at our Japanese episode. Okay.
I appreciate that. They actually...
branded.
Branded, yes, right. You see,
You suck at Japanese.
Japanese, this right. It's a bean. So they... they actually are utilizing, products that from other people's recipes and a lot of their blends. And, I usually when you see things moving between a contract distiller house and then bringing in house, you have that continuity of recipe. But I don't know how you're going to do that with a blended, product.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, many distillers have had that problem where they try to jump from something they're purchasing to something they're making their own, and it's never going to taste the same. I mean, just to name a big brand that will see a massive taste difference is going to be Bulleit Bourbon. Going from Four Roses to their own distillery, you will see a massive taste change. And it's just impossible to recreate. There's too many nuances with whiskey, still size, location, rack house, barrel, cooperage. I mean, there's just too many things that can change when you move locations.
It's entirely different. It's going to be entirely different. But I'm thinking to myself, they've got enough that is in storage that they own, that's sitting at Four Roses they own. And my guess is they're going to start blending over time and slowly transition into 100% Diageo made spirits.
Right.
So that it's, they'll bring us into it. If you get a bottle of it today versus a bottle of it 10 years from now, it'll be entirely different. But if you buy a bottle every 6 weeks, you're not going to notice the difference as it slowly changes.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the past with stuff like Old Fitzgerald and products that have jumped many distilleries and been sold over time. The taste profile changes. One of my favorite products that's changed over time was like Old Charter. It changed multiple distilleries, and you can taste a difference every time it jumped ship.
And the same thing happens in Scotland all the time, as when they were going through their collapse of their whiskey industry and, before their most recent boom, a lot of the smaller places that were, not really making single malts under their own label, they were supplying a lot of the big blends. Well, some of these houses disappeared. So, you've got these big blending houses scrambling, trying to find some other product to try and keep that blend consistent. So
Absolutely.
Well, I reckon we better be getting on the whiskey train right about now. Bob gets the honors of going over our SIPS ratings for today.
All right, we'll be tasting and discussing these whiskeys from High West and rating them with these SIPS ratings, plus our signature sounds. Here are those ratings now. Number 1, give me a glass of water to wash out my mouth.
Ganga, water. Ganga, bring water. Bring water.
We do have a lot of water here today, right?
Yes, we do.
You're making me miss Harmeet. Number 2, nice, but what else do you have? No sound?
Well, isn't that nice?
There we go. Number 3, interesting. What was this again?
Interesting.
Number 4, let's keep this a secret to ourselves. Pour me another.
That's classified.
And number 5, oh my, I was unaware anything could be this good.
Oh my goodness!
Yes! 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 Yes!
Well, interesting discussion that we've all had so far, you know, on all these interesting products from High West, and we're hearing the train roll in right about now, and I think we're going to have to probably take a break. You guys need some more whiskey, right?
Absolutely.
Always.
Well, let me get the kettle on here. Hey, we'll be right back after this break. Hey, welcome back from that train ride. You're out here in the Wild Wild West.
Yeehaw! Howdy!
My yeehaw was a little slow there on the draw. Sorry about that, folks. Hey, you're back at Sips, Suds, and Smokes. Today's Sips segment is talking about a flight of products from High West Distillers out of Park City, Utah. A lot of great stuff for us to talk about.
Whip that gerbil.
So let's get right to some fire water. Jason, I think my horse fell over because of all this heat. So we're going to cover these products one at a time with our tasting notes, but we'll wrap up with our overall thoughts on the flight with time permitting for today. So those products, once again, are Boo Rye, Campfire, Rendezvous, American Prairie, Double Rye, and Midwinter's Night's Dram are the products that we're going to go over for today. So we're going to keep that same order, and we're going to go around, taste each one of these, and offer up our tasting notes as well as our sip ratings. Up first, we're going to have Boo Rye, and Bob is going to give us our tasting notes and his rating on that product.
The Boo Rye is a combination of 9-year-old bourbon and rye whiskeys that are aged 10 and 16 years respectively. The ratios of each whiskey in the blend aren't published. The original release caused quite a stir, quickly became a collector's item in the first release. Unlike the previous blends that they have made here, this is a blend of different types of whiskeys. Therefore, TTB classifies this as a blend of straight whiskeys. It is a 9-year-old straight bourbon from LDI MGP, a 10-year-old straight rye from LDI MGP, a 16-year-old straight rye, also from LDI, and a 16-year-old straight rye from Barton Distillery. It's a very interesting blend. I was lucky enough to get a taste of the first batch. This one that we're tasting today is pretty close to that one. Picking up little bits of molasses, little bits of caramel, some coconut, a little bit of sweet corn. You get that bourbon sweetness up front, and then the back half of the palate is when the rye really starts to kick in. It gets a little more intense. Dried spice finish on the end. I give it 3.
A 3? How about that? Interesting. What was that again? Jason, your notes on Boo Rye.
I said the initial taste was of sweet corn. To me, I know that the blend is a much older blend, but to me it tastes still a little young for some reason. It's kind of got that corny taste to it, which is probably the Barton whiskey coming out. But yeah, the finish is definitely of that rye taste, and I think it's good. It's not great. I think that I gave it a SIPS rating of a 3.
3 as well. Interesting. What was that again? Well, Beast, your tasting notes on Boo Rye.
Yeah, I like this stuff. It's a good drinker. I get a nice balance, definitely in the nose, that kind of buttered popcorn thing. But then you get some of that mint, you get a little spice, a little vanilla, some of that good saddle leather. I drink this stuff. I also gave it a 3.
3 as well. Interesting. What was that again? And my tasting notes here on Boo Rye are, I had a sweet start, a pepper spice, thing definitely going on. A bit of a clean finish. I was a little surprised by that. My SIPS rating for Boo Rye is a 3 as well. Interesting. What was that again? Where you have it, 1 product down and 3s all the way around. Next up is going to be Campfire. And Bob, you did such a great job reading the description. I'm just going to let you keep doing that the rest of the episode.
I might be able to handle that. We'll see. Next up is a blend called Campfire. It's one of the most unusual blends in the market that I've ever had. It consists of a blend of Scotch, bourbon, and rye whiskeys. A lot of whiskey enthusiasts are fans of these individual types of whiskeys. I doubt anyone's ever tried to blend all 3 of them together. It's designed to combine the strengths of each and allow each one of them to play off of the other. The sweet of the bourbon, the rye spice, and the smoke of the Scotch definitely create a very unique flavor profile. Again, the proportions of each whiskey in this blend aren't disclosed, but it does consist of a straight bourbon from LDI, a straight rye whiskey from LDI, and a Scotch whiskey. They don't disclose the source other than to say it is not from Iowa. All the whiskeys in it are 5 years old or older. I remember the first time I tried this, I looked like the dog looking at the Victrola in the RCA ad. It just confused the hell out of me. It's one of those things that you taste it and there's that sweet immediately, and then you get that rye spice in the back of your mouth, which kind of messes you up, and then as you slowly breathe out, you get that peat. And if you are a fan of all 3 of those individual types of whiskeys, having all of that happen in your head at one time will blow your damn mind. Fruity nose, a little bit of caramel, a little bit of butterscotch, a little bit of toffee, a little bit of nutmeg, tobacco smoke in the end. The smoke lingers, gives it a long finish. It's one of those whiskeys. I try it and I'm not sure I like it. I'm not sure I love it. It confuses the hell out of me. Sometimes I absolutely love it. Sometimes I just stare at it. And I like to give it to somebody who has never had it before just to see the look on their face. It reminds me of in the 80s when the guys in Australia were doing the crazy blends with all the different grapes down there. I applaud them for the effort. It definitely is. If I told you I was going to make this, you'd say there's no way in heck you could make this work at all. It's going to be horrible. I give it a 3.
How about that? Interesting. What was that again? Well, good old boy Jason, what do you think about Campfire here?
Well, I'm going to have to agree with what he said. It is very, very interesting. The first time you try it, you're just like, what the hell did I just put in my mouth? But yeah, it's sweet on the front. It finishes like a Scotch. To me, I taste very little bourbon. To me, I taste very little rye. It tastes like a malt whiskey. It tastes like a Scotch. And it is very, very heavy on the peat. I mean, it's liquid smoke in there. This is one of those things where I'm torn between a 1 and a 2. So I'm going to give it a rating of a 2. And the reason is because it is so unique and so different. Now, I will say one thing that I have read is that there are a couple products coming out mainstream from some big producers that are very similar to this, blending Kentucky bourbon with Scotch. And I know Jim Beam's coming out with one also.
Well,
So
isn't
Sip's
that
rating of
nice?
2, nice, but what else do you have? And Peast, what did you think of Campfire?
All right, well, I'm going to kick off the offensiveness in this episode and hopefully get myself banned from Sip Suds and Smokes. I wrote down a redneck in a kilt.
Oh, I like that.
It hasn't gotten any more fashionable, and it sure doesn't seem comfortable.
Banned once again.
Yeah,
I've
I
actually
don't like
seen
this
that.
one.
I know exactly what that looks
I
like.
really want to see a redneck in a kilt now.
We've had him on the show.
I love all these parts, and I don't love them together. I love bourbon. I love peat. That's my thing. But these things are just bouncing around. I have a funny story about this one. The first time I tasted this, I was with David Perkins. It was in my glassware at one of these whiskey shows, and I heard a rumor that Jim Rutledge over at Four Roses was going to break open his 125th anniversary small batch. So we were excited about that. So David and I walked over there with our glasses. I said, "Oh, Jim, I hear you're opening your new bottle. Can I get a sip?" And he goes, "Oh, of course. You know, we're excited about this one." I hold out my glass, and he just goes, and smells it, and he puts down his head, and he gives David this glare that could just curdle cottage cheese. And he dumps it. He rinses it out with water, smells it again. Dumps it, rinses it out with water. He eventually had to rinse the glass out with his own Four Roses yellow label just to get that peat out of there, so it would be tolerable enough for him to pour his bourbon in there. I gave this a 2. I agree. It's creative. David's a tinkerer. I love that. But this is a little sacrilegious for me. It loses the
isn't
real
that
straight, nice, sweet of the bourbon, and the peat's just banging against it in not a great way.
So Sip's rating of 2.
Well, isn't that nice?
Nice, but what else do you have? Well, so my tasting notes here on Campfire. The first thing I wrote down was just kind of a strange, smoky nose. I've really had such a broad range of things with smoke on it. So many different varieties of peat, with all the Scotch. But there was just something about this that was a little unusual. The thing that reminded me of is, oddly, it's Corsair's Triple Smoke. And I think it's just because watching people's reaction, to that, is that they make so many other, bourbon, Tennessee whiskey, style products, and then they have this very, heavy smoky product. I think that it's just kind of catches people off guard. And I think that's kind of where, I think this particular product lands. I think it's, I wrote down a very polarizing, product as well. It's a very strange blend. I'm going to call this the Frankenstein, product. And, is a Scotch, is a bourbon, and I think because we've tasted so many of those products, to have them welded together like this really, I think, is your palate's not prepared, for it. So I think for people that probably taste a lot of products like us, I think it's very easy for us to look at it and try and divide and conquer it and categorize it and, put it in a box. But I think for maybe an average consumer where they only have maybe 4 or 5 things, in their cabinet, this might be something that they love to just, break out and give them to an in-law that they don't like. For sure.
I love to hate it.
Yep.
Hey, this is really good. Will you drink the rest of this for me?
Yep. I can already hear the music playing down. Something's about to go down. Well, if I had to put my bet on what the blend is, I'm going to say it's Speyside Glenmorangie. I think that's what this is blended with. So we'll see.
But where'd
the other word I wrote down besides Frankenstein was this is the distiller's Boilermaker. What's in that? Just a whole bunch of stuff in there.
What was left?
Yeah. So, well, with all that, my Sips rating for Campfire is going to be a 3.
Interesting.
Well, next up is going to be Rendezvous, and Bob's going to introduce this product for us as well.
All right, Rendezvous is a blend of two straight rye whiskeys, both of them high rye mash bills, a 16-year-old rye and a 6-year-old rye. This one gives it a much more pronounced rye punch because it's a much higher rye recipe than the other one that they do, which is their double rye. It's a 6-year-old LDI, which is 95% rye, 5% barley, and then a 16-year-old from Barton, which is 80% rye, 10 corn, and 10 barley malt. On this one, I got, on the nose, I got cinnamon, vanilla, a little bit of peppermint, burnt sugar, caramel, a little bit of green apple. On the taste, definitely spicy. Picked up some cinnamon, mint, caramel, molasses, little cocoa, little candied fruit in the back end, a lot of rye spice on the end. Definitely like this one. I gave this one a 3.
Interesting.
A 3. Interesting. What was that again?
Well, I'd give it a 3.5, but you won't let me do halves. So
Absolutely not. Good old boy Jason. How did you like Rendezvous?
You know, I tasted it, and I think we were talking when I tasted it. This was the first one of their products that just tasted like straight LDI rye to me. I don't know why, but it just reminded me of Dickel rye from that MGP tasting that we did. So I gave it a sips rating of a 2. I said it tastes green and too young, and when we found out that it had 16-year-old whiskey in it, I was shocked.
A sips rating of 2. Nice, but what else do you have? Beast, tell us your tasting notes here on Rendezvous.
Oh, I don't agree with those last comments, my friend. This is a good rye. I really like this stuff. You can taste that old Barton rye, which is nice, and it's got that vanilla thing going on. It's mint, it's cinnamon, it's got a little char to it. I really dig this one. I'll drink this all day. It's a nice, high, punchy, spicy, just good drink. I gave this one a 4.
4? How about that?
That's classified.
Let's keep this secret to ourselves. Pour me another. So my tasting notes here on Rendezvous are going to be, I found that this was so similar to, the double rye, which we're actually going to talk about right after this. In a couple. I'm going to reserve my tasting notes because they cross over between the two, but I will tell you my sips rating for Rendezvous is also going to be a 3 as well. Interesting. What was that again? Well, so I think let's just change up a little bit of the order that, we talked a little bit about earlier, because the two things are so close to each other. I didn't want to give it away. So let's actually talk about double rye, here right back to back. So, Bob, why don't you lead off and tell us what's the difference between Rendezvous and rye and the Rendezvous? Yeah.
Well, the main difference is the component parts is blended. They're both a rye whiskey made of a combination of 2 separate rye whiskeys, whereas the other one was a 6 and a 16-year-old. This is a 2-year-old and the 16-year-old. It's also Barton is the 16, but this is a much lower rye content Barton, and the 2-year-old is a 95.5 rye from LDI. This one, I like the Rendezvous a little bit more than this one, but this one you definitely get that young flavor of the LDI. It comes out. The rye punch is definitely a lot more there. I pick up from the young rye, you get that almost that botanical juniper, evergreen eucalyptus sort of nose to it. The rye is definitely present up front. I still pick up in the mouthfeel the mint, the eucalyptus, a little bit of honey, sort of a licorice toward the end, and just a touch of wood smoke. This one is definitely a spirit that it's driven by the young one that's in it. You can definitely tell that is the predominant one in the blend. It's definitely a serviceable drink. I've drank it many times. I give it a 3.
How about that?
Interesting.
Interesting. What was that again? Jason, what'd you think about Double Rye?
Well, I'm with you. I see a lot of similarities, and I will say that I tasted them back to back both times. The Rendezvous has a little bit more sweetness, but I mean it's so small that you can barely tell a difference. And to me, what that says that the difference between a 2-year-old LDI rye and a 6-year-old LDI rye is not that much, which is why I am under the principle that you don't really make great whiskey out west. You make better whiskey down south where there's a lot more temperature variations, and the difference between a 2-year-old whiskey and a 6-year-old whiskey could really be the difference between a bottom shelf and a top shelf. Whereas in this, you really can't tell a whole lot of difference. So I gave this a SIPS rating of a 2. And I basically said it just tasted very young. It tasted very green to me again.
So, Beast, what do you think about Double Rye and maybe some of the variation off of Rendezvous as well?
I actually thought these two couldn't be more different. I really liked the Rendezvous. I thought it had a little maturity to it. Now, granted, I'm trying to qualify these. If you're going to compare this to a 23-year-old, Rittenhouse or one of the old Willett Dougs or something like that, these are not masterful ryes. But I really did like the Rendezvous. The Double Rye, I wouldn't have even thought this was a rye, nosing it. It's got this vegetal, weird sort of palm thing going on, oily smell to it that's not pleasing. It's hot but weak, which is not a great combination. I was between a 1 and a 2. I gave it a 2 because it's not swill, but I really didn't care for it. And I'm pretty sure I could pick these out a mile apart, even without even tasting them.
So what's your SIPS rating then on Double Rye?
I did give it the 2 because it's not swill, but one had gone through my head.
A 2.
Well, isn't that nice?
Nice, but what else do you have? Well, so, I kind of reserved, a bit of my tasting notes kind of cutting between the two because I really thought, they were so close to each other. I mean, personally, I really could not tell a whole lot of difference between the two. I thought that it was lots of pepper and rye, had a, spicy, kind of average finish, to it all. And I don't know, I just... I don't know that I really preferred one over the other. It was, like I said, very difficult for me to distinguish between the two. So I have exactly the same SIPS rating for this as I did for Rendezvous, which was a 3.
Interesting.
Interesting. What was that again? Well, very interesting blends, back to back. And, I love, Jason, you were kind of noting that, what is the variation between, a 2-year-old rye from LDI and the 6? And, really, what does that do?
Yeah, and I just don't think that it ages that fast out there, so there's not a lot of difference between a 2 and a 6.
Oh, but it's not aging out there. It's aging in Indiana.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. In Indiana, there's not a lot of temperature variance.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Utah.
No.
Well, I hear the roundup coming along once again. So, listen, we're going to round up the cowpokes here, and we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back in just a second. Hey, welcome back to Sips, Suds, and Smokes. Today we're having a Sips show on High West Distillery out of Park City, Utah is what we're talking about today. Lots of interesting products, and we're having lots of fun with all of our Western gear. Got your chaps on, right, Jason?
Cowboy hat.
Well, you better settle up next because we're going to be talking about American Prairie. Bob, tell us all about this.
All right, American Prairie is a blend of 2 straight bourbons. It's named after the American Prairie Reserve in Montana. It's a 5,000 square mile land tract the size of Connecticut. It's been restored to back in the old days when Lewis Clark would have seen it. It's the largest wildlife preserve in the lower 48 states, and High West donates 10% of their after-tax profits of each bottle to the American Prairie Foundation. The 2 bourbons used to make this are a 6-year-old bourbon made from LDI. It's a 75 corn, 20 rye, 5 barley malt. And a 10-year-old bourbon made by Four Roses, 60 corn, 35 rye, and a 5 barley malt. got a lot of citrus, a little bit of cherry, a little lemon on the nose, little candy. Like this one a lot. A little bit of cocoa in there. Definitely a floral nose. This one I liked. Just a very bit of spice in it. A little bit of pecan. Gave this one a 3.
A 3. How about that?
Interesting.
Interesting. What was that again? Jason, what do you think about American Prairie?
I said it was very light. It's definitely, we're kind of leaning more towards the bourbon compared to all the rest of them, which was definitely a lot more rye spice with that green rye taste. This one's very interesting to me. I definitely can taste the LDI bourbon a lot more than the Four Roses. If I was to think about the 10-year-old Four Roses bourbon, the only thing that really comes to mind that this kind of resembles is like the 10-year-old Bullet. It's kind of very similar to that. I gave this a SIPS rating of a 3. Interesting. But I think this has the most potential to me of all the ones we've tasted so far. I think that maybe if this one was blended and then re-barreled, this one could be a very interesting product.
And your SIPS rating was
a 3.
That's what we said, right? Yeah. Interesting. What was that again? Well, Beast, what do you think about American Prairie?
Yeah, it's an interesting whiskey. On the nose, it smells like those now and later candies that smell real great and crack your teeth open. Overripe melons, very sweet kind of. It's not for me, although I could see the appeal. It tastes very young. I don't really get much of a 10-year Four Roses off of this, which is one of my favorite drinkers. I gave it a 2.
Oh, how about that?
Well, isn't that nice?
Nice, but what else do you have? And, I had a similar reaction to this. It was kind of hot, semi-sweet. There was some citrus overtone kind of on the nose. I was thinking it was probably orange. Was my best guess. But I did not like this nearly as much as some of the other things. I admire what they decided to create, but this didn't do it for me as well as some of the others. My SIPS rating is a 2 for
Well,
this.
isn't that nice?
Nice, but what else do you have? Well, next up is going to be Midwinter's Night's Dram. This is a very interesting product. Bob, tell us all about this product today.
All right, it's named after Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. And if you went to high school, you were forced to read Shakespeare like the rest of us. The first bottling of this debuted on Valentine's Day in 2014. It's a fairly limited release. Starts with Rendezvous Rye, which is then finished in used port barrels and new French oak barrels. The port barrels, I believe, are Quady Port from California. There's a number of producers out there that are experimenting with barrel finishes. Maker's Mark, I know Wes really well. They're doing a lot of port cast finishes and whatnot. This one is one of the earlier entries into the slate of barrel finished whiskeys. It's like I said, it's already you already know what the proportions are because it started out with the Rendezvous Rye. It's a 6-year-old straight rye and a 16-year-old straight rye from Barton. This one, I actually had the good fortune to try this at Whiskey Fest in New York. It would be October of 2013 before it had actually been released. A friend of mine had met David Perkins a few months earlier, and we were at the show, and I said, this guy meets people for a living. He's not going to remember. He meets people all day. We walked in. We're 20 feet away from me. He turns. He sees my buddy, and he goes, "Jeff," and calls us over. Pushes everybody out of the way, spent probably 30 minutes talking to us and ignoring the salespeople that were there. And then after that time, he said, "I really want you to try something." He pulls out a sample bottle with a plain white paper label written in marker and poured us some. And I said, "What's this?" And he goes, "Well, we don't have a name for it yet. We're just using a working name now." "What's the working name?" The working name was Bug Juice, which... I said, "That's perfect. Leave it. Don't change it." But I got to admit, a Midwinter Night's Dram is a better name. This is my favorite whiskey of all that they make. It's I mean, the first time I tried it, the first thing I thought is, this is like Christmas in a bottle. It's like a giant Christmas pudding in a glass. I still can't believe that if you take the Rendezvous Red that we've already tasted, what they get out of it just by aging it in a couple of different barrels. Vanilla and caramel and cinnamon. It's mulled spice, dried fruit. It's remarkable what they're able to pull out of just, you know, some simple barrel aging. I give this one a 4.
How about that? Let's keep the secret to ourselves. Pour me another. Jason, what do you think of Midwinter's Night's Dram?
Well, it's really interesting. I'm going to kind of agree with him a lot. I think that other than the straight 16-year-old and the 21-year-old that I was fortunate enough to try that we're not tasting today, this is their best on-the-shelf product. And I gave this a rating of a 4. I think it has great spice. I think that the French oak adds a lot of creaminess to it that is really gives it like a really great mouthfeel. And I've been fortunate enough to try multiple different releases of this, and I think it really is their best product. And I honestly believe that this is the first product that they've released that I could actually appreciate the blending and the distilling of. You know, I've never been a fan of just taking two products somebody else made, pouring them together, and then calling it your own. This, to me, feels like the distiller put his own flair, put his own flavor profile in it, and I appreciate that.
So the Sips rating of 4. Let's keep the secret to ourselves. Pour me another. Beast, what do you think about Midwinter's Night's Dram?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I'm not a fan of barrel-finished ryes. You know, Angel's Envy put their rye, which is normally okay, in a Caribbean rum barrel and made it, you know, taste like bubble gum. It's nasty. Hudson put their rye in a maple syrup barrel. I think it's on the menu at Denny's now. Not good. Willett put their delicious rye into some kind of an orange liqueur. It was a Grand Marnier or something like that. You know, tasted like they just dumped some stale sugar and some orange rinds in there. It was not good. This one's really good, though. You know, I wouldn't have even picked out that it was port. It just gives it a real nice round, warm thing. It brings out a little vanilla. I was between a 3 and a 4 on the Rendezvous. This one I toyed around with giving it a 5. It's not a great whiskey, but it's very good. I gave it a solid 4.
Solid 4. Let's keep this secret to ourselves. Pour me another. Well, my tasting notes on this were, I wrote down almost the presentation, you know how it is. It kind of has a sweet pepper start. Then it's kind of spicy in the middle, and you taste a little bit of some of the rye. And then it finishes with kind of a sweet finish to it. It's very complex, and there's a lot of layers, you know, in this. And, you know, I think the one thing that caught me in the description, which I did not read before tasting it, by the way, was the introduction of rum, a rum barrel, you know, over a rye whiskey. I think really softens a lot of the harsh pepperness that a lot of people, you know, for people that don't like rye whiskey. And the same way that, you know, Angel's Envy, you know, drops, you know, some of their products in rum, I think that's the reason why it's had a lot of appeals, because that sweetness and the softness that it creates, you know, around the whiskey itself, I think really helps to hit a non-traditional audience, I think, for those products. And so, you know, I think probably the thing that I was thinking about all of this was, are you going to be able to pull this off again? Because when I really look at the number of things that are involved to really make this and make it consistently, this really strikes me as something that may have a product lifespan that may not be, you know, incredibly long, because the access into Angel's Envy cask is probably going to come at a real premium, you know, for them to be able to make this, you know, time and time again. So do I think that this is really good? It's really good. But I really wonder how this product is going to evolve over time. You know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, will it taste the same as what we had today? I think that'll be the real trick. I think it could even be better. than it is today. I think there's definitely still some room, on that layering, of the flavors itself. But I have to say, I was with Beast. I was kind of lingering. I'm like, this is really good. I don't give up, the top until something just really has to blow me away. But at the same time, I can really see a lot of people enjoying this. This is going to hit a very broad audience. So I did knock it back down. My Sips rating for Midwinter's Night Stream is going to be a 4.
That's classified.
Let's keep the secret to ourselves. Pour me another. And I had that same kind of feeling. I was lingering for a bit more of this, even after I finished it. And I think that that's the reason why it's pretty easy for me to see that it's going to have a lot of appeal to a broad range, of people.
And I'll say, touching on what you just said, there have been multiple batches of this, and they do taste very different. They basically call them acts. So Act 1.1 was very different than what we're trying right now. They're all very, very different.
Yeah. Well, it's the components going in are different. I mean, the good thing is the port barrels that they're getting, they're sourcing from California.
Those will stay the same.
The French Limousin oak, they're new barrels, so they, that's not going to be a problem. They, they get those, they just have to pay for them. It's the product that goes in and, blending that out right to get the right taste. And like you guys said, yeah, I've had pretty much every release they've had, and they are all different. I mean, they're all very similar, but there is definitely variation from batch to batch. But that being said, every batch I've had has been stellar. But if you really want something to push you from a 4 to a 5, I will point out that what you're drinking now is Act 1.0. This one came straight from the gift shop on the day of release.
There you go.
I had a friend bring me a few back, so drink up, because this is the last bottle I got.
That's probably why I liked it so much, because I've tried Act 2 points. I don't know. I get them all damn confused. But yeah, I've tried 2 point something, and it was not nearly as good as this one was.
Yeah. What was it, Sarasota, Bob? Which version was there?
I think it was 2.1.
Because I went back and read my tasting notes, and it wasn't nearly as favorable as what we had today.
This one's a lot more creamier than the other releases have been.
Yeah. Well, we only have a couple more minutes left here, so I'm curious what you guys thought about the overall flight. We'll start with you, Bob.
It's not a secret. I'm a fan of their products. They make very decent stuff. Some of it is exceptional. Overall, they don't have anything that I've ever had that I would call a clunker, which, anybody that has 15 or 16 products usually has 1 or 2 that are just not in my flavor wheelhouse. They're doing interesting stuff with what they've got in hand. They're doing some interesting work with the stuff that they're making. So I'm excited for the future, what they've got.
Jason, what do you think of the flight?
Interesting. Very, very interesting. And I can tell you that I have a lot of people that call me and ask me for recommendations of whiskey all the time. And I actually recommended this whiskey to somebody very recently. A big Scotch drinker, wanted to get into bourbon, loves smoke. And I said, you know what? You need to go try some High West products. And
sorry, I was shaking my head.
But, their products to me do not taste like a normal bourbon. They don't taste like a normal rye. They taste like a Scotch drinker was trying to make a bourbon or rye, and that's where I see the little niche that they found. And I think it's a great niche to hold. It's very similar to the Corsair niche, that's going to smoke everything. Yep. So, interesting. Not my cup of tea. I definitely do not, as you say, own any of these bottles except for one of them, and I definitely try to pawn it off onto people when they come over to my house. But interesting. And I do think over the next 5 to 10 years, you will see a lot of interesting things come out of them.
So, Beast, I'm curious what you thought about the flight.
Yeah, I think I agree with Jason there. I mean, the only one of these that I would probably recommend to someone to buy a bottle would be the Dram, the Midwinter Nights Dram. I thought that was excellent. If we were in a bar, I think the Rendezvous is a solid order. I don't know that I would go seek one out. And the rest, and the Bourye maybe as somebody who's kind of not into huge flavors but just wants something very smooth. I think that's an interesting one. little disappointed by a couple of these. The double, the prairie, the campfire, not really my thing. But you got to love David and what he's doing. It's a cool attitude. He's been super nice. I've bumped into him a bunch of times, and there's a few solid products here. So I think he needs to keep working at it.
Well, very interesting round of products. And I have one last thing to finish this up here, which is this.
To you two gentlemen, inventive, brilliant, courageous.
We'll drink to that, because it's true.
And I toast all of you gentlemen for this discussion, so let's wrap up our episode for today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and you can catch all of our episodes online as well, anytime, on SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, YouTube, PRX, and Spreaker, our native media host. iTunes and our own Android app are the easiest ways to enjoy this show on your phone. Just search for Sip, Suds, Smoke on your iTunes or in the Google Play Store, and you'll find us right there. We love your feedback, and you can reach us online anytime at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Our daily tasting notes flow out on Twitter every single day. Our handle on Twitter is @SipSudsSmoke. And our Facebook page is definitely always buzzing with lots of news. Listen, do us a favor and take the time to rate this episode. If you're listening to us online, that's a great big help to us, and we get to see your feedback as well. So, Bob, exactly what does a made man do?
Whatever the Godfather tells me to do.
Vito, bring me another dram. The midwinter's not the dram, okay? It's very good.
Leave the gun, take the cannoli.
Well, thank you for joining us always, once again.
Absolutely pleasure to be here.
Smoky Beast is a blog that Steve authors, and I've been a big fan for years. And
thank you, sir.
Steve, tell our audience all about Smoky Beast.
Oh, sure. Thanks for the kind words. Actually, my wife and I write this, Mrs. Beast and myself. We have a 4-year-old, and when she was born, we found ourselves not living the nightlife we once did, so we started a little tradition on Sunday nights. We'd get a nice bottle. We both loved whiskey. It was actually her idea to start writing down our notes, and then we started publishing them, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback. A lot of generous folks help us out, and so we've built quite a collection of bottles and notes and reviews and interviews, and we hope some of you check it out and enjoy it. But Mike, thanks so much for having me today. This was a ball, and hope to do it again.
Well, thank you for being here, Steve, most definitely.
So what you're saying is having children makes you drink.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Well, personally, I would say you had really bad. Bad cable TV, but I was just going to keep that to myself. But so much for that. Absolutely.
You can only see Barney so many times before you reach.
I agree. You should combine Bob. Add the cannoli into the equation, and I think you'll have a makings of a good session with a cannoli and whiskey for sure. Jason, always a pleasure to have you here at the table. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you all for joining us on this episode. We'll ask you to come back once again and keep on sipping.
Yeehaw! Howdy!
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sip, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.